Hey yo, it's your guy. So let's just get into it. I got my little props here. Just wanted to talk about these fellers, which I'm sure you probably saw in the thumbnail or something, if you're a ginormous nerd like I am. So I really just wanted to talk about my history with making art and these two things, which totally transformed my brain chemistry forever. So when I was about in middle school, when I was a kid, I did obsess over the song Clint Eastwood. My mom had one of those CDs from the swap meet that just had like the hits. I always thought like a guy in a cowboy hat sung it for some reason, which is funnily enough not that far off from what Damon Albarn actually looks like. But I've always had a history with making things. I've always really liked doing things. While I did obsess over my dad's Casio keyboard when I was a kid, I'd learn all the little demos, the little pre-built songs in it by ear. It's not really what I started off with. Like, I didn't think of it as like a career or a hobby or whatever, which is funnily enough what I want to do now. But I did start off with drawing a lot. A lot of my friends that I made growing up drew. And so when I really discovered Gorillaz was around like maybe middle school. So like, let me explain to you, like Gorillaz, if you were the ideal, or not ideal, if you were the common 2000s kid, they freaking nailed basically everything that you could think of that kids were into at the time. Like if I wasn't on YouTube or on Newgrounds, the third most common website I was on was the Gorillaz website. Honestly, only because it's like they had tons of animation on there, tons of like they would post as the characters and stuff on their forums. They had like this website where you could hop around their little studio and stuff, and you could follow along with the little story, right? Because you're already here, you already know. I don't have to explain it. Gorillaz, they're not a real band. Like, there's a real guy behind it and stuff, but the whole idea is that it's a virtual band. So like they had their ongoing story, and you could hop on their website, come back like in a week or two or in a month or something, and you'd see like kind of what changed, what's progressed with the story, what's changed with the little studio. You could navigate around it and stuff and go through every room looking for little secrets, little mini games. Sometimes you could even find, like, you're into their music, you could find demos of unreleased songs on there. Like, they nailed it, man. Like, they really knew how to reach out to their community. Like, they pretend again to be their characters and stuff. They post and reply to comments and all that. So to a kid like me, that's like, man, I like drawing, man, I like music. I was kind of starting to get comfortable with like, what do I like? Like, what are my favorite, albums? What are my favorite movies? Zombie Flesh Eaters, I think, was the name of the studio that worked on all of Gorillaz' stuff back then. And they really knew what they were doing. And I think that was like kind of their goal was they're a virtual band, like in terms of like presentation and stuff, like they want to make it fun. But I think really what they were all about was just really appealing to kids and making sure that kids were discovering new like artists, discovering new places to look for art in general, like really inspiring kids to just think a little bit more deeply about art. It was around this time too that I found, I'll talk about this first. I found this documentary, which, I kept drawing and stuff, but at some point I don't know if it was just from purely lack of interest or just maybe lack of patience. I didn't really get too much further into drawing. I started losing interest in it. But what really was starting to just echo back over, like, maybe I'm interested in drawing, maybe I'm interested in making games, maybe I'm interested in filming things and putting them on YouTube. Above all that was just a growing interest in just more music. I was picking up other instruments now, like the guitar, and I kept searching on the internet for like music making programs and stuff. Like, I'd go on Google and look it up, and I would find just nothing but like a lot of DJ software. Sometimes it would be these programs where like you'd get like presets and like cut up loops, like instruments and drums that people would already record. And it'd be a bummer. It'd be like, this isn't really what I was looking for. Like, I wanted to know how to make my own stuff. I don't want to work with what other people have recorded already. So cue finding this documentary where you get to see the creators, Damon and Jamie, basically like just fucking around for an hour and a half, like in like these beautiful studios or sometimes in people's like living rooms and stuff. But it kind of removed a lot of the mystique about it, you know, like, yeah, they have this front that they're a virtual band and all that. And so, like, you know, there's the characters and whatever side of it. And that's also a lot of fun. You know, I do like the artistry and the story and all that other stuff too. But you get to just see these guys, like, basically having the time of their lives. Like, and the idea that, like, yeah, really? Like, you get to sit around and, like, this is what you get paid to do? Like, it turned on a couple of light bulbs in my head at some point. The most important part of this documentary, Bananaz, which is funny if I didn't say the name of it, but there's this moment where Damon Albarn's getting interviewed, and they asked him kind of about, like, his creative process and stuff, and he replied with something that just sounds so simple, but it's incredibly profound if you really think about it, where he got to this realization in his career that everything became so much easier when he realized it was all about making music. That's it. It's all just about making music. So me, little teenage Vic, like, to hear that from, like, one of my favorite artists was just kind of like, really, that's all it takes? Like, there's no mystique, there's no mystery to it. Like, I just have to sit down and make things. Like, that's it. Again, like, this isn't something that's, like, terribly profound, I guess, you know, but when you're a little kid, to hear those words, like, for something that just sounds so, well, first of all, scary. Like, it's something that's like, okay, I had to be a little bit more vulnerable, like, to learn instruments. Like, it's not just sitting at a desk in quiet, like, drawing and stuff like how I was before. Like, you know, I have to risk looking embarrassing, or, like, I have to risk learning this completely different thing. I'm so used to drawing, like to learn instruments and learn them nicely. Like, that's a new thing, and I just wasn't very, you know, feeling very confident about it. But to hear someone who, like, I see them behind the scenes, like, having the time of their lives, like, have my mind blown, like, this is a career, this is what people do. And then just to say, like, dude, don't worry about anything else, just worry about making music. That's all you have to worry about. And he said this, like, at the age that I am now, I'm 30 now, which is, I think, the main reason I wanted to make this video, because I've been making music half my life. So it was a real crucial moment to hear this guy, and, like, later on in his life, having done bands, years of, you know, paparazzi and all this other nonsense, just to sit down and simply say, like, it's just about making art. It's all that matters at the end of the day. So I did start focusing more on learning instruments and stuff. You know, I picked up the guitar, really started looking to, like, recording things. I picked up, like, a cheap MIDI keyboard, used. It came with its own little software, real simple and stuff, you know, it wasn't anything glamorous, but it finally let me actually sit down and try to write things, you know, and try to record them. And I listen to I get obsessed with, like, listening to what I wrote and what I recorded and play it back. And I get so obsessed to the point of, like, it wouldn't let me record, I think, past, like, a certain amount of instruments. So I'd have to, like, figure out workarounds to get more instruments involved. Like screw your trial. I want more instruments on this, so I'm going to figure it out. But by this point, I was already a lot more confident in my taste, you know, what I was into. And, like, it was like I would hear whispers on music forums, because I was into listening to more, like, I guess, out there albums. And I was almost kind of in the spirit of Gorillaz. Like, they were the unifier of different genres, you know, like the hip-hop kids, hip-hop, who says that? The rap kids would, like, gather, the rock kids would gather. Like, it's just, like, you know, the electronic kids too. Like, it just was, like, a very, like, one of those earlier, like, oh man, we're all into, like a bunch of different things, you know, it's cool. On those forums, though, you hear whispers of an album that was like, okay, they're coming back. It's been 5 years. Like, supposedly they're going to release something new. And then sure enough, cue, like, probably what I think is the best, you know, album, like, release lead up I've ever still seen to this day. But it all started with just one simple leak, and I remember it so well. It was a picture of the fictional guitarist Noodle in, like, a super low resolution with this logo also on top of her in a really low resolution. And for a little bit, that's all that we knew. But my camera's dying. Let's continue this story in a second. All right, screw it. Here's my workaround. We'll use my phone now. So I think I left off on, like, the really low resolution image leaking. that was I remember very specifically was like the first like oh my god, is that the name of the new album? And I remember people specifically thinking that it was kind of a lame name, like it didn't sound like a real album, but it certainly was. And I really wanted to get into like a quick explanation of why it was such a good lead up to it, because they knew that it was really anticipated. Like they were riding the hype cycle full circle. So it was it was inspired by these old and oh man, how do I explain this without getting super nerdy about it? Basically, I think this was in Britain where this happened, if not America, but there was these things called pirate radios where like you would have people basically broadcasting their own radio signal that you could access with your radio set, and a lot of these people would play music that you wouldn't traditionally hear on the BBC radio, like because they would only allow certain either they would only allow certain genres or bands on their radio or whatever. But in any case, like to listen to like say dub music in Britain was really difficult unless like you like already knew someone that was into it, or you were tuning into these pirate radio stations. And at one point it got literally so pirate radio because they would have to uh, take to the seas, literally, like these radio operators would take to the seas and be just far enough from the coast that the police over there couldn't catch them. And it was dope. It was just such a dope story, and I'm probably butchering like the exact history of it. If I remember to find a good documentary or something explaining it better, I'll link to it below. But these pirate radio stations were like super iconic over there because it was like a whoa, like they're playing the stuff that you really wouldn't hear on public broadcasting, you know. I'm getting into all these great bands and stuff. And so in that similar spirit, the fictional bassist Murdoch would also like do his own pirate radios. Obviously these were on the internet, so it's not, doesn't have the same I guess like impact or whatever, but to a kid, high school me, this was 2010. So I was like 14, 15 years old. It was the coolest thing ever. And through those, like he would release the playlist of each song that he would play afterwards. And I got me into like so many movies, you know, like I got into The Shining, other Kubrick movies because of that. I got into like old reggae bands that I wouldn't have listened to, like Toots and the Maytals. I'm trying to think of who else I got into. I got into like old punk bands, you know. I think I got into The Fall that way. And definitely like my favorite Clash album that way because I knew who they were. But I think he had played it might have been from that album, but there's this I'm getting too off topic, but I got bands like The Clash basically, you know, is how I got into them, was through these pirate radios. And at one point their YouTube became active again. Like it was only like all of their old music videos, but now you started seeing like man, I'm totally gonna gush about these, but like you started seeing like these little snippets of like musics, you know, like you'd get like shots of here's my prop, gotta bring back my prop. You get like shots of just different parts of the environment around the plastic beach with like these 30-second instrumentals and stuff, some of them ranging from like really Middle Eastern influenced to like just cute electronic influences, to some of them were just full blown like orchestral scores. And it was like, well, what direction is this going in? Like the music sounds like it's all over the place. Like it sounds like the guy's clearly experimenting. It sounds like the artist is clearly experimenting, because this looks like it's straight out of one of those like you know, like those I Spy books and stuff, where like they'd have the environments like that's not a fire truck, by the way. That's just the hype alarm going off in my brain. But anyways, the artist, the actual drawing artist, Jamie Hewlett, was challenging himself, because it was like, this is so different than just, you know, only just drawing art. Like he's just like a full blown 3D environment that later on you get to see like the full, like how the setup was done with like professional lighting and like an actual genuine model of the whole island and how they filmed that and stuff. So you'd get these little snippets on YouTube. You get snippets of updates to the story through both of these, the pirate radio and the YouTube, because in between songs, the basics Murdoch would explain kind of what's been happening for the past 5 years since they last dropped an album. And you'd also get like quick little updates. Aside from music teasers, you get updates to the story and stuff through little super quick, like 1 minute updates too. And so you got this sensation of like, well, things are going on, you know, whether you wanted to believe the bassist or not, as to whether that was really the real story as to what was going on. It was just real, like, intriguing, you know. And then finally, you know, at the beginning I talked a lot about the website and stuff, but you know, that was also like, it by that point had been in just abandoned for years, you know, because it was really active when I was younger, and the album Demon Days was more fresh. But now with this new one, Plastic Beach, they had a brand new website, you know, with like a whole banner of like under construction, you know, kind of going on. So I was like excited, because I was like, oh man, like that's gonna come back too, like all the interactivity, the interacting with the fans, the getting to click on the website and you play games, or you find demos and stuff, or you advance the story, like things are going on. So me, by this point, I'm a kid that's like, I've had years of like, I'm really into drawing. I really like the idea of telling stories. I really like the idea of making and recording music. Like, I remember people on the music forums and stuff when I was growing up, uh, like any crumb of new music, put it this way. Like, I remember at one point, Amazon or iTunes, one of the two, accidentally leaked like 30 seconds to each song like on the album, and we all just like obsessively gushed over them for weeks, you know. And I was like, I feel like this one's going to be my favorite already, you know, which ended up being true. Empire Ants is absolutely my favorite song on that album. I was a humongous fan of it, because now every music video that they were dropping as the album was gearing up really now towards release, now it wasn't just being teased, now they were in full-blown like release mode. Every music video was like advancing the story, and it was amazing. You know, first single was Stylo. You had Bobby Womack and Mos Def. I forgot what he goes by now. I think he just goes by his name, Yasin Bey. But first single was like, you know, you had Bruce Willis chasing them down the California desert. Like, oh my God, it's Bruce Willis. I just watched The Fifth Element, you know, or what number is it? The sixth element? No, I'm thinking of The Sixth Sense. Fifth Element. Like, I Die Hard too. I had just watched these Bruce Willis movies. What's he doing here, you know? So, mind blown, right? Little kid like me. And when it finally dropped and you got to listen to the full thing, you absorbed the story on the website, you absorbed the pirate radios, you absorbed the imagery of it, you absorbed listening to the whole album and digging into the lyrics and stuff. This was the first real experience I had with the idea of a concept album. Not that I hadn't listened to, I guess, concept albums before. You know, I'd listened to like, you know, a couple Pink Floyd records and things like that, but this is the one that first really cemented the idea of that. You know, this is where I was like, this is what I want to do. You know, this is like, I want to make the same feelings that I got listening to Plastic Beach, watching the Bananaz documentary, the same like sparkle that I got to just continue to get better at making things, and to really make things that weren't just like trying to like, oh man, I want to be like a, I don't know, like a songwriter, or just like, I want to make pop songs, you know. It was like, I'd want to like find where that sweet spot is too, you know. Like, I'd like to challenge people too and make things that are just sometimes maybe not traditionally like appealing, but maybe it's interesting, you know, and it appeals to me. I wanted to make things too that were like that, you know, like big concepts in albums, and just take music in an interesting direction. Of course, you know, long story short, as I'm gonna wind this down now, because I mean, over the years, I think got a little too obsessed over perfection, and you know, trying to make concept albums when I hadn't even made my first album. You know, I still haven't made my first album really. I've put out a lot of music, but it's all in that same spirit, you know. It's all in the spirit of like just trying different things and trying different genres and just doing what appeals to you most and sticking to what like you really are interested in, what you believe in. And I just had this, you know, complete 180, maybe not 180. I don't know what the term for it is, but as soon as I explained it, it'll make sense. It was like this real coming home feeling the other day, where I watched a clip again from Bananaz, as I tend to do every couple years. I'll rewatch it, and I got to that same clip recently, you know, of Damon Albarn once again saying like, man, at the end of the day, you know, like, everything gets so much easier when you realize it's all just about making music. the rest you don't have to worry about, If you find yourself a little too maybe getting obsessed with the metrics and am I doing it right? And am I, am I doing the right thing? Am I appealing to people? Am I not appealing to people? At least if you're at the stage where I'm at, I'm not Damon Albarn, I'm not a worldwide famous celebrity, but if you got yourself a little too overthinking, those types of details, just remember at the end of the day, you just have to show up. It's all about just showing up. It's just as simple as making music. And for whatever reason, like, it had this moment where, like, it clicked again for me. The exact same way that it clicked for me 15 years ago, watching Bananaz for free on YouTube. Somehow I own it on DVD now. But this exact same way it clicked for me back then, it clicked for me again half my life later. And I think to this day I still maintain that, aside from how much like this has helped me make art over the years and stuff, if we take it by itself, it still remained, if not my favorite album, one of my favorite albums of all time. But I think it just really means an extra personal thing to me because of just what the band is, what the band has been to a kid like me growing up, and how much it expanded my mind, I guess, with like my tastes, like how many great bands and great films I've seen over the years, and how it's okay to just, like, you want to be having fun with the stuff, like, that's what it's all about. Screw the whole, like, tortured poet shit. Like, just, you want to get better at your craft. You also want to get better at enjoying the process. You just sit down and show up, put in the work, like, it's not more complicated than that. Just seeing, like, as a kid, it's just how fun it could be, and like learning just how, like, where should, like, I go when it comes to like what direction should I head in with my art? Being able to see, I guess, like, musicians that I really look up to do that, and then being around for this album dropping, being able to see that build up, being able to see how creative and how fun, like, just like teasing all that's like the new stuff was, and then being able to see how, like, when it finally released, like, how crazy, like of a concept that it's aged like fine wine, actually, and seeing people come around to it over the years, seeing people like really go like, hey, that was really something, and yes, it was, but to me, it was I think, catalyst for, like, this is, I think, the actual moment where I decided, like, I'm gonna give it my shot. I don't know if I'll have a career in making art. I'm not, the one deciding that, but I know I'm gonna show up and put in the work, so that at least this is something that I want to do every day for the rest of my life, is just to be creative every day, for sure. So I think I'll leave it at that, man. Plastic Beach, still a great, fantastic album. I really recommend it. If you haven't listened to it again, it's aged amazingly. It's one of those records that's like, I think you'll at least find one track on there that you'll really like, because it's just so varied. It's just so like colorful, so just like lush, great lyrics. Like, I think there's something for everyone on it. But to me, it's my favorite album of all time because it really cemented just like a really, I think, important aspect of myself. And I think it's really all I wanted to talk about in this video. So if you like listening to me yap, I do a lot of creative work myself, and that's kind of my end goal at the moment right now, is I just really want to inspire as many people as I can to be creative every day in whatever it is they choose to do. But if that sounds like fun to you, please subscribe, stick around for more. I promise I'll try to get less yappy in the future videos. I always try to be less yappy, but I think this is something that meant quite a lot to me. So we'll leave it at that. And Plastic Beach, 10 out of 10 album, Gorillaz, favorite band. Please give it a listen if you haven't already, but I'm sure you have. Check you guys out later.